Jai Hind, Jai Bharat, and welcome to Dev Talks. This is Aadi. It's Thursday night it is, and it's the night of Ukraine. And of course, we have Major General Prabdeep Singh, who's going to tell us about some latest developments. There is a rumor that Bakhmut is fallen. There are talks about a European peacekeeping force. There are talks about the Chinese kind of backing off from the Russians a little bit. Europeans running to the Chinese to get some peace done. There's a whole lot which is happening as we discussed last week. Sir, good evening. This war never
Good evening.
feels amazes, sir. There's something new every day.
Yes, good evening. It's good to be back with you, Achit. And Ukraine, of course, as you just mentioned, every day it's a new, not every day. I think by the hour we have something new coming up. And the last few days have been rather interesting, uh, exciting, I would say. Some say Bakhmut's fallen, and I do assume, and I kind of concur with the fact. Then you have, as you mentioned, the European Union thinking in terms of a peacekeeping force unilaterally. I mean, I don't know where that idea came in suddenly from. Then you have the French president all the way going down to China, trying to pressurize or uh, request the Chinese to come and mediate. Then you have Finland. The biggest talk of the town today is Finland, whereas Finland has been absorbed as a part of the 31st, is the 31st country, as part of NATO. So the NATO is very excited, so is Finland. Uh, Russia, excited, not excited, we'll just talk about it as we go along. And you have about 14 fighter jets coming in again. And I mean, lots happening. So let's discuss. Let's go ahead and we'll take on issues one by one. Uh, make this talk even more interesting. I'm
Sir,
rather
this
excited. I'm rather excited of the fact that I see the end in sight, and I'll
ah,
tell you how. And there's lots of talk. Even the Ukrainian President Zelensky, he's been in Poland and he's talked about withdrawal from Bakhmut if required, etc.
all right. I think give us a second. Sorry, guys, just give us a second. I think sir will be back in a second.
Yeah, yeah, I'm wrong.
All right. Okay. Perfect. Yeah. So Zelensky went to Poland, sir.
Yeah, even in Poland, I mean, and he's made a statement saying that if need be, we'll withdraw from Bakhmut. We would not want our soldiers to get killed. So
Abhi
there's a
Poland.
change of stance. Yeah, and this is an interesting fact. Uh, Other issues which come along are already reconstruction plans being drawn up. A lot of chatter about reconstruction plans. The Americans and the Ukrainians, they've already had a kind of tie up when they're thinking in terms of reconstruction. Germany is talking of getting into reconstruction. Europeans are talking of peacekeeping force. Zelensky is talking of pulling out. Finland has joined. The missiles, Iskander missiles, have been placed by Russia and Belarus. So I don't know if whether it was the tactical weapons, the talk of tactical nuclear weapons, which has started this uh, number of issues which are coming. I've just spoken about. So I think the war should be ending soon, but it all depends. It all depends, and you will ask me as to what it depends on. I think it entirely depends on Zelensky, plain and simple. There's much talk about the counteroffensive. There's much talk about the equipment which is coming in, uh, the tanks which have been received, the aircraft, 14 fighter jets to be provided by Poland, all that. Uh, but at the same time, counter-offensive, whether it goes through, how big is the counter-offensive? How well are the Ukrainian forces poised? Those are questions which we need to, uh, which will get answered as we wait for a couple of more days.
Hmm.
I did read about the reorganization and the restructuring of the Ukrainian army. This restructuring is, at the moment they only talk of brigades and divisions. So there was this talk of raising of corps, and this was something which was being talked about. This means that the entire structure, the command and control structure, is in of the Ukrainian army is in sort of a disarray, and till such time this all this is restored, a counteroffensive cannot really materialize because, as we've discussed earlier, the type and the bandwidth of the equipment that is there, various types
Hmm.
from various countries, all this needs to be meshed up, organized, reorganized, rehearsed, and then we can talk about counteroffensive. But do they have the manpower? Do they have the will as of now? Uh, I have started doubting after the utterances by the president that we may pull out of Bakhmut.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I have a slight doubt on that, whether even if the counteroffensive and will it go. So let's see as to what happens. Yeah.
Let's talk about Bakhmut itself, sir. First and foremost, I mean, this is an interesting city. The Russians call it Artemovsk. I'm sure I'm pronouncing it wrong by at least 100 times, but anyways, uh, they've got it surrounded operationally for a while, sir. It seems like these guys have left the road open for some reason. This battle has been dragging on for a long, long time, and it feels a little weird, sir. Uh, I am not any military specialist or anything like that, sir, but you are one. Tell us, does it take actually that long? And it's not a very large city.
You know, I was always amused as to how this city was addressed. The first thing that you do, as I've always spoken, is to cut off all the routes of ingress and egress. In this particular case, they have left the western part absolutely, free, and they've drawn in maximum number of Ukrainian troops into the trap. It's being called a trap. The Ukrainians thought that they were engaging the Russians in a brutal frontal kind of a urban warfare and a war of attrition, and large number of Russian casualties have been caused. I think it's the other way around. The city has been bombed. The city, I don't think there's any building worthwhile standing, and as it is, there are very few families. We are all aware it was there were about 70,000 inhabitants in Bakhmut, and it was famous for its winery. A big winery was there, and that winery was famous for making wines and storage in those caves and the down below and the underground bunkers, which are serving as bunkers today. Anyway, so there are very few locals left, and only those people who are left there are pro-Russian. You
Hmm.
see, Bakhmut, the civilian population which is existing today is the pro-Russian population which is there. Whatever was Ukrainian, they've all gone.
Bhage wo. Hmm.
Obviously, they haven't stayed, but the pro-Russian ones who want to be a part of Russia or who believe and have their affinity towards Russian, they are there. So, what does that imply? That you do not have the local support also. The Ukrainian soldiers living in the fighting in the town or in the city do not have local support also. The local support is also in favor of the Russians. So this is an issue which you need to consider. Now, I don't know what the utterances of President Zelensky saying that we may withdraw. or we may pull out troops from. We don't want more destruction and more death to be caused uh, to our soldiers. Actually, sounds strange. If you recollect in the last episode we spoke, last time when we spoke, I did mention that it was a matter of ego which was playing up in
Yeah,
the minds of the president, and they were holding on to Bakhmut and say as to why Bakhmut is important, and we have to hold on to Bakhmut. If we don't hold on to Bakhmut, it opens the way out towards these two cities of Kramatorsk and another one,
Slovians.
Slovansk. So that is what they were talking about. And today suddenly he goes to Poland and he says, I may just pull out. So as have stated, he's neither a general nor a politician nor a diplomat. So today he's just going around and getting all these medals of honor from the various countries. Uh, but in the bargain, he's got many of his Ukrainian troops killed. And the Russians have been smart. The Russian army is not being used much. It is the Wagner group which has been used. It's a local militia. It's composed of convicts who are enjoying being in the battlefield. Trust me, the Russians have conserved the forces and used the Wagner group. The Wagner group has caused a lot of casualties, and the putting up of the flag in the central building at the center of the town itself is a symbol of capture. The moment you have entered the heart and you put up a flag, it belongs to you. Of course, the Ukrainians did try and mock it over media, but
Hmm.
the fact remains the flag is there and on a number of buildings. So I think the Russians have had the way. They have caused a large number of casualties. The troops have been battered. The Ukrainians have been battered there with artillery, with missiles, and of course, in hand-to-hand and combat warfare, which has taken place. I mean, at the urban warfare which has taken place, the contact warfare. So they have suffered a lot of casualties. I think the Russians have achieved their aim. They have conserved their force. Now the Ukrainians are thinking otherwise, wanting to pull out. So let's see. I think it was a good, well laid out trap by the Russians.
It's been termed as one of the modern meat grinders, and it's a horrible term to use for life as per se, but that's what it's coming out to be, sir.
Yeah, it's been called the meat grinder because every day they've been making hitting them very hard, and making small gains every day. The figure that was quoted was about, say, a kilometer in a week or 3 kilometers in a week, something like that. But I think
That's
that is also a bit too much because you have to go block by block,
block.
and a
Yeah,
block and infantry battalion also would take one block at a, not even a block, a building or two at a time. The very aspect of going into this kind of a battle, going back to World War I kind of a battle, is not understood.
not understood exactly, sir. So you mentioned Zelensky went to Poland, and there was a huge medal honor. This that, I think he also finalized the discussions about these fighter jets and this and that. There was another thing that he said that kind of got missed up by the media, purposefully or not, I'm not sure. But he said that in the future there won't be any borders between Poland and Ukraine. No political borders, no financial borders, no people borders. Now, that is a bit curious when somebody is talking about a peacekeeping force going inside and he says there are no borders. All it takes is for these two guys to sign a paper and there you go. What are they trying to do? I mean, usurp Ukraine in
Yeah,
some way or what?
You see, I find this very interesting, a very amusing rather. And if it happens, what you just said, no borders. There were certain the Russians were saying, the Russians have commented, the officials officially commented that it is likely that Poland is going to take away certain parts of Western
You,
Ukraine. Right now, Ukraine today has not been subsumed as a NATO country, despite all the war. That remains a mystery. I mean, you're letting them fight, you're letting them die. You are willing to supply all the weapons, but you will not declare them as a NATO country.
not even
Now,
a
because
NATO
you do
partner.
not, yeah. So until or unless it is a ally, NATO partner, NATO country, you cannot deploy your troops in Ukraine. The moment you say Poland and Ukraine are one, or Poland has taken away certain territories which were traditionally Polish. What does that imply? That implies that NATO troops can be placed at that particular point.
Yep.
The moment they are brought under Polish control, that particular area, the northwestern part of it, is under Polish control. And you deploy troops there and you deploy weapons there. So, willy nilly, without declaring Ukraine as a NATO nation, you want uh, troops to come in, you want your missiles to be deployed there. So I think this is a game which is being played, a strategic game which is being played, and he would have well been tutored to uh, you know, make these statements, and I think it's a very dangerous play at work.
This is what I'm saying, sir. When I look at this and I look at Finland coming in, and then you say, okay, was this war all about just pushing the borders up to the Russian border, the NATO borders up to the Russian border, so that you could keep the MIC going quite hard on because you're going to be facing off your enemy every damn day. Uh, Ukraine was just a pawn out. उसको medal schedule Ukrainians, the brave people, now come to us. We will take care of you. But you've pushed yourself in front, bang in front of the Russian mainland.
Yeah, that is what is happening. Precisely what is happening is that uh, when the world actually should be looking for peace, and that is what the end of the Cold War era was. When when the Cold War ended 1989 and 91, the USSR dissolved. And then subsequent actions to take away nuclear weapons and reduce nuclear stockpiles and all that. Those were sane people at work. Those were people who were looking at the future for the world. Today, on one side, we are looking at sustainability, we're looking at Earth summits and Rio summit and this protocol and that Kyoto protocol and all that. And here you have a country being destroyed and so much of TNT being put in or been dropped into a country. Nobody's talking about pollution here, right? Of the earth here. Even depleted uranium is acceptable. So all the time you talk of climate sustainability, COP26, COP27, and today all that goes for a six is not applicable at all.
Yeah.
Finland, Sweden happiness index is the largest happiness index in these countries, the Scandinavian countries, and they are also thinking in terms of joining NATO and stuff. So I think there's a mismatch here in the entire geopolitical sphere. There is something amiss. And why are the Europeans? It remains a mystery to me as to why are the Europeans so keen on banging their head against Russia. I mean, they're all doing it at the behest of the United States.
Mhm.
If the United States was not there, holding their hand and trying and supplying weapons and the arms and all that, and so much of
15
aid,
minutes later.
yeah, the billions and billions of aid being poured in and promises being made. You had yesterday they talked about 2.5658 billion being supplied, being provided, 500 million worth of ammunition which will be provided. I mean, it is strange, absolutely strange. The Europeans seem to have lost it. They're not getting bread to eat. Their energy, cost is going very high. They started depending on the United States, and I think United States has achieved its aim of shifting the dependency of Europe from Russia and China towards the United States.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the most it's a great economic strategic move. So the Europeans have fallen for it. That is why it is having reverberations. That there is chaos in Germany. People are already revolting. We don't want war.
France,
France.
it's
Why do you
ridiculous.
think? And these two countries, they're politically, the leaders are in a particular. As of today, they're rather unstable. I mean, they do not know where the future lies. That is why they're running
Exactly.
off to China and kind of being on their knees, do something to stop the war. It's literally that.
Yeah.
I mean, both the German president, the Spanish, and the current the French president, they've all been to China and actually been requesting that you do something. You're the only one who can save us. Short of words to this effect, that's what they've done.
It's pathetic.
It's pathetic, actually pathetic. Because their
I mean,
their political life is limited.
I don't have any other word for it.
Absolutely. So
I don't have any
Europe
other
is
word.
in deep Europe is in deep trouble. Americans are pushing them to an extent that I do not seem to understand. Historically, you may have had differences, animosities, and all that, but today it is all about economics. Whatever said and done, it's about life. It's about standard of life. It's about humanity. It's about uh, leading a good life, a sustainable
Money.
life,
Mhm.
money. And here, as it is, the East European economy has always never been so good. Of course, the Scandinavian countries have been very, very strong economically, but the erstwhile Soviet states, coupled with the after breakdown of Yugoslavia, all these countries which came about, the Eastern Bloc, they they are economically very weak, and you weakened them further. So this war has actually taken back Europe a couple of years, and it's going to take a long time for things to come back to normal. Yeah.
You know, curious as a Poland last week gave some sort of not a bill, but a statement that the amount of weapons that it has given Ukraine is close to $2 billion. It's just funny when you start adding up all this stuff and you find that is it that they've given these weapons in terms of money, in terms of land? If I will give you this money, this much land is ours. Because the role of Poland and the fanaticism of Poland, it's the only one, as a matter of fact, is inexplicable. Why? Because Stefan Bandera is hated in Poland. Now, how does that work? I fail to understand this.
You see, always said Poland, the influence of the United States in Poland is huge, and because they are the ones who are stationed there as a NATO partner, they are the ones who are responsible. Uh, the Americans have been able to convince Poland to their way of thinking. Today, if you ask me if Poland army or the armed forces, what do they have to defend themselves? I want to ask them this particular question. You've given away everything to Ukraine, everything to Ukraine. What is left for you? Tomorrow, if the Russia is sitting on your borders, what do you have to defend? I don't think they have anything worthwhile
I think
to defend themselves. And perhaps they're banking upon Article 5, and that's about it.
that is also consensual.
Yes,
All the
it
members
has
need
to
to
be ratified.
concede that okay, now we're going to come and
Right.
defend. If they don't concede, Poland
Yeah,
is done.
absolutely. And then, so let's look at it this way. It's given it all for this war. After all, it's not a rich country. It's not a not a major economic power. When it is not, then definitely it needs to get compensated. If you are pouring in so many billions of dollars into Ukraine, then you got to reimburse the countries which are contributing. That's a plain and simple thing. I mean, after all, the money which is going to Ukraine or in the name of the Ukraine war should also include the cost which is being incurred by the other nations.
Mhm.
There are two things. One is I willingly support you with so many billion dollars.
Donate it.
Yeah, I donate it. So I don't talk about it.
खत्म कहानी हाँ.
Poland, I don't think has ever made a statement that I have donated so much of equipment. So
It's aid.
if it has not donated, it has provided at the behest of the Americans, then definitely it needs to be compensated for the equipment that it has provided in haste at the cost of its own security. And I think it's absolutely right. And the Poland's are demanding money for it, and it makes sense to me. But today it stands pretty vulnerable. That's what I feel.
So, so let's talk about Europe as well. So you mentioned standard of living and this and that. If you look at Scandinavia, beautiful standard of living, completely cradle to the grave sort of a business. I personally feel that a lot of this standard of living, especially Germany and France and all that stuff, came because of cheap Russian natural gas,
Right.
cheap Russian oil. Excuse me. Now the entire standard of living has been disrupted. How do you sustain a socialist democracy or a socialist backed democracy or socialist thought process where you want to take care of your people with your pensions and this and that and the other when you don't have that cheap Russian natural gas coming again?
Very right. This whole thing, as the war gets prolonged, you will find that the Europeans are getting into deeper trouble day by day,
Yep.
economically. And when the war starts hurting the stomach of a common man, trust me, my friend, that's the time either it should have ended or it should end.
Immediately.
because yes, and slowly and slowly, I think that that is already coming into that realization is already setting in amongst the Europeans. It is all about Russia supplying cheap energy. I mean, cheap gas. Now here you've shifted dependency to the United States, which gives it to at a higher price. When all this, in Eurasia, the continent, this continent is one, and now you want to go transatlantic. So I think the Europeans heads of states need to start thinking that thank you very much, NATO. Uh, we would rather have a European defense force, and trust me, they're talking about a European peacekeeping force. This is modeled on the lines of what the African Union has.
Hmm.
You see, there is the African Union, and in the amongst the African Union, in many states, other than the United Nations peacekeeping forces going, they also have the African Union. I don't know the exact nomenclature, but the African Union also provides peacekeepers in those states. So they have a standby kind of a force, or they build up a coalition of African Union, African countries forces, and they deploy them as peacekeepers, either standalone or in conjunction with the United Nations peacekeeping force.
Yeah.
So this kind of a model is what the European Union also perhaps is thinking about. So I mean, Europe should is worried, if I may just put it. They may not come out in the open to criticize NATO. I'm talking about the leaders. Public is already coming out, and Germany is already talking out. Thank you very much, NATO. And when this kind of a thing starts happening, NATO has to. It may just about dissolve.
Yeah. One fine day, just poof, gone.
Yes, and you see the other side of it. Now let's go transatlantic and let's go to the United States. The United States, with the domination of the dollar dwindling, you know, there is going to be trouble in the United States as well. As it is, Canada is reeling under a lot of pressure. So is the United States. United States has its own problems, Mexico, etc. It has Taiwan issue to be looked into. It has made big enemies, China and Taiwan issue, all that stuff. So America also starts. The American people also need to start thinking, and that is why you have a lot of defense analysts which are openly criticizing the policies of the present United States government, and rightly so, because they are actually feeling the pinch on ground.
Mm.
So Russian this war is changing a lot of dynamics. America economically going down because of the value of the dollar. I mean, de-dollarization, so to say. Europe caught between the devil and the deep sea at the moment, and Russia. If I may just put it, Russia's one nation, single-handed, without Chinese support. If I may just put it, without Chinese support, because no weapons being supplied,
Yeah.
only only rhetoric, just one mention with you always and stuff. I mean, it's not real backing. China is just there. China is a bystander. China is watching the fun. Actually, he's watching the fun. He's watching what is playing around, and he's making everybody play around. And uh, he's got them all on their. I mean, revolving around him. I mean, if the Europeans have to run to China, there is an issue, right?
Yeah.
The entire trade dependency with China is actually in deep trouble because of what's happening in Ukraine. Even Japan has gone and bypassed all these sanctions, etc., and gone and bought some oil. When it comes to, I would say, when it comes to the mullah, when it comes to economy,
Yeah, yeah.
trust me, everybody is looking at their own personal interest, and any wise leader would think about his people first, and
Wise
then
leaders, bottom line.
wise. That's what I'm saying. Wise leader. It's thinking about its own people. It's thinking about its economy. It has these immature leaders who are looking at jumping into the fray and also wanting to cheer up along with the others.
I don't know, sir. I mean,
So
if I may kindly, I don't know if they're immature or they have this stupid globalist agenda that they don't accept nationalism in any way. I mean, it's just my feeling.
you're talking about,
These leaders, these European leaders, so-called,
yeah,
Ursula von der Leyen, she mostly, I mean, I've not heard her talk about European unemployment, European industry, European this, European that, nothing. It's just Ukraine, 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 Ukraine. And you wonder why are the people accepting it?
you see, these are the people who get very excited. Something is happening in the neighborhood. I must also play a part. I must also be in the limelight. That FOMO, fear of being missing out. That FOMO is there, and they want to be seen as active partners. So maybe there will be something that in the future may come up to them when it comes to developmental issues, reconstruction issues. So they're looking today. They're looking ahead. So these are the people who are jumping.
I must say, sir, you hit it on the spot because she's actually planning to become the NATO president, NATO general
That's what I'm
secretary.
telling. That's what I'm telling you. These are those in the army terms, in Indian army terms, we call them KKs, Keen Kumars, right? Who are always jumping jacks. They all
हाँ सर,
they're the
चलेगा
ones
सर.
they're the ones who keep raising the hand. So these are the jumping jacks, the KKs who are in the fray. So they are more worried about their progression and their visibility rather than they have nothing to do with. They have no emotions. They want nothing to do with soldiers dying on the battlefield.
Yeah.
They couldn't care a damn. These are the kind of leaders who just want to be in the forefront of an activity,
हाँ.
irrespective of what activity it is. So uh, that is what it is. And and trust me, they're all pretty immature at that. As I said, that today's factor FOMO,
Fear
fear
of
of
missing
missing
out.
out.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's it.
Absolutely.
How are they bothered? How many people are dead? They've never seen somebody die. They do not know what it means to hold someone dying in their arms or trying to revive somebody who's dying in the battlefield. They don't know what it means and the effects of the mental effects of a war, of a soldier, what he goes through,
Civilians
post
who get impacted by,
PTSD.
yeah,
Yeah,
displacement,
the,
refugees, just ridiculous. Sir,
absolutely.
last thing I wanted to ask you is about China. Now, China is interesting, and allow me 30 seconds. China signs a no limit agreement with Russia just before the war. No limits. Sab khula. Then doesn't send a bullet, at least overtly. Supports Russia here and there, but not, you know, it's an ideological support, not on ground support. When it came to recognizing Russia's legitimacy of that referendum, they said, no, we don't recognize it. Okay, let's keep that aside. Again, he goes to Moscow, Xi Jinping. A lot of us called it symbolic. I think we spoke about as well that as well. And now the European Union ambassador of China, he says that this no limits is nothing but rhetoric. Don't take it seriously. Acha ji. Then he, as you said, he's got the Europeans begging to him to come and fix this. Sir, this guy is playing on both the sides.
Absolutely. He's playing on both sides. Have you seen his grim face? He's expressionless.
Wow.
He's way too smart. And he's way too smart, and it's difficult to judge as to what exactly is in their mind. You must realize China's playing to a particular game. They have their own timelines fixed, they have their own agendas lined out. They know exactly when they want to do what. So when they have defined and laid down what they want to do, they are not going to budge. They will do what they want to do. Presently, he is, as far as China is concerned, his only interest is how do I revive trade with Europe. He is not interested in Ukraine. He is interested in a devastated, broken down Ukraine, totally, in shambles. What is he interested is in that railroad line. My border, that BRI should not be impacted. I will step in to reconstruct. And what will he reconstruct? Only that corridor which is of interest to him through Ukraine and which leads into Europe. Trust me, that's all that will be the Chinese interest. Today, if you think that he is much bothered about the United States, trust me, he is not. He's played his cards well. The dollar, as we always, have earlier spoken about a year and a half back, the Chinese want their currency to be the supreme currency, and that is what their aim is. They want their own renminbi to be the prime currency of the world. They are questioning the domination of the dollars, and they played the cards well. Today, dollars, we know what is happening. Every country is wanting to trade in its own currency. So China is playing its cards. Couldn't care a damn as to what is happening in Ukraine.
Yeah.
I want peace because I can get my road and belt road, that BRI, one road, one belt, one road thing going. That's about it. I'm only interested in economics. So, as far as Russia is concerned and the Chinese and Russian relationship is concerned, he's again very clear. I'm your friend because I need you, not because you need me. Today, Russia needs China. So you seen that attitude.
It's asserting itself with him also.
Is absolutely asserting. Earlier, it was always, Russia was considered as a superior partner,
Yeah.
but Russia has
Technology,
proven it.
military, this, that.
Yeah, but in the eyes of the world today, we know that Russia uh, has fallen down in grace as far as military might is concerned. Economically, no. Militarily, yes. It has fallen down in the eyes of the world. If I may just, I just qualify this statement, falling down in the eyes of the world, is a lot of talk going on that the Russians, there was a counter-offensive and the Russians withdrew. Russians were thrown back. Counter-offensives by the Ukrainian army and a lot of
Kharkiv region.
celebration. Yeah, a lot of celebration on that. That is actually, I would not say counter-offensive, which was successful. It was a deliberate action on the part of the Russians to pull back and not get embroiled in a fight for which they were not prepared, because they had not prepared themselves for a battle like this. So the best thing is disengage, pull back, conserve, come back when you're ready.
Yeah.
And that's what they did. And I think that was the smartest thing to do at that particular time. They did not come organized to fight. They came organized to conquer. As I said, conquer. Just walk in and everybody will surrender. And that did not happen. They landed up in a fight. They were not prepared, so they suffered casualties. They said, "Thank you very much. We are back. We're going back. We'll come back again."
बाद में आते हैं.
बाद में आएंगे यार.
Live to fight another day. Why not, sir? Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. So that is a smart move. To think that it was a defeat is wrong. After all, the Russian army over so many years knows how to fight.
Yeah, yeah.
And today also it's fighting well. It is hammering the daylights of Ukraine.
See, the problem is, sir, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, sir, the judgment of the Russian army has been done as per the shock and awe policy. कि भाई they're not done shock and awe, तो ये तो बेवकूफ है.
हाँ, इनको बेवकूफ, इनको लड़ाई करना नहीं आता.
नहीं आता.
Not realizing, I think that was the wisest thing to do at that particular time. Is to say, yeah, we didn't go prepared to fight. Might as well withdraw, and we'll come back again once we'll see as to what is happening. So, what did they push ahead? What did they push ahead? They pushed the Wagner group. Now, you can keep trying Wagner group for war crimes. Russian army is not involved. As it is, he's a criminal, the guy there.
Also, some nefarious stuff that guy does.
Yeah, so that's what I just wanted to cover. But as far as the Chinese are concerned, you got to be wary of the Chinese. The whole thing, every time I speak and I bring in this Finland joining NATO, Sweden following, is following. All this is directed towards future wars or future competition of the Arctic, and that is what we got to be watching. The whole thing is shifting northwards.
Yeah.
Why is it important to have Finland in the NATO fold?
Arctic. The
So,
next battleground.
next competitive ground. So, China, Russia, I mean, if you just look at all the countries which are bought in the Arctic region, that is where you will start understanding as to what is happening.
We are also trying to
That is
get
where,
their Russians.
yes. So you will find the world's thinking and talking Arctic, and soon you'll have a North Arctic alliance, and that's where the challenge to Russia would come about. If that is where the Chinese will step into the Russians' territory, and then there will be a Chinese and a Russian conflict, competition. Then there will be Russian and NATO competition of the Arctic. Then the Americans, because they are far away from there, they will step in into this area. All that. So, if you look at 25 to 50, 30 years hence, 2050, the dynamics of this area would be totally different.
Yeah, absolutely. So this, I must say, the level of conversation that we've had in this episode has surpassed, I think, all the 4-5 interactions that we've done before. This has been a very, very amazing this thing. I think we've covered a broad aspect of it. मजा आया इसके अंदर, I must say. We've had a very, very good discussion, and I'm sure our audience will also feel so.
Yeah, it's 407th day today of the war. I mean, 407 is the day today. And dynamics changing. Let's see as to where it leads us to.
Absolutely. So let's get into some questions. Guys, please do like the video, subscribe to the channel, spread the word. You won't hear this kind of narrative, this kind of understanding of the entire game anywhere else. Let me say that to you very, very clearly. Very few people in the world that are actually talking a very balanced thing. That's one of them is right here. You can do support the Dev Talks efforts. The QR code is up there. or a super sticker, or you can just become a member. So I'm going to take a put up. Normally, I don't like to get into Indian domestic politics, but there's a little comment. It's I think meant as a complete joke. I'm going to start that. And guys, I'm sorry it's out of turn, but Gaurav, you've outswung yourself. Mamata Banerjee and Arvind Kejriwal should be allowed to become the NATO president.
Yeah, he's talking about that because he's quite tired of the comedians already in the fray.
Yeah, yeah. जैसे अब किसी और को भेजते हैं वहां पर.
हाँ, किसी और को भेजते हैं. Uh,
So
yeah,
they could not figure out Bakhmut, why the Ukrainians seemed to hold on to it. Had recently revealed that was Surovikin's plan. Draw as many as Ukrainians into Bakhmut so that they could be killed. It worked.
yeah, we've discussed this. It is
Yes, sir.
basically uh, what is it called? It's called a rabbit trap, if I'm not wrong. You from four sides. I've read it. It's again a Russian. Yes, it is indeed a Russian tactic, wherein three sides you hold on, you cover the thing, and then you let the enemy come into the trap, and then you close the trap. So this kind of a thing has worked.
Hmm.
And if they do not pull out, well, they'll be genuinely trapped. So the
So
number of
both ways will
casualties that
know.
they have suffered, yeah, number of casualties that they would have suffered or the prisoners taken would be much larger. If they move out in time, that would be worthwhile. And I think as far as Bakhmut is concerned, this business has absolutely worked and worked well to the Russian advantage.
Hmm. Otherwise, they would be in another situation like Mariupol, which
Yeah,
there are many other
that's what.
options. Your views on possible world order formation after this war? That's a big question, buddy. Will this war
Yeah,
weaken Russia or de-dollarization of world economy? Your thoughts? Just a short one, sir, because this is, otherwise this is a whole show by itself. I think
yeah,
we could do
Rahul.
that one time.
Yeah, yeah, we can do this separately, but definitely the entire order is transforming. Two dyads are following. This is you have heard of triads. This is a dyad. You have the Russia, China, you know, ganging up together. You America's got to fight the Russians and the Chinese together. Americans have got to fight the Chinese as the prime enemy. So you have you know different kind of groupings as it is the large number of groupings which are being formed. So these groupings will undergo a slight change, if I may say. You know, the groupings you will have new groupings coming about. I think NATO will transform. Uh, there may it could well happen that NATO is renamed. It's just a wild thought. Or at the same time, you may see the emergence of a European defense force. You may the global South may gang up together
Mhm.
under the leadership of India. Most likely, going to happen. India, as a nation, is seen as a very powerful nation, as a balanced nation, and not taking sides just for the heck of taking sides. So the 70% of the world which is there, which is not following, which is not a part or not indulging in this war games, is with India at the moment. So you will find the global South and the North Atlantic Treaty Organization uh, competing for space in the economic world. You may have Russia and China ganging up together and competing economically. So a lot of changes are going to happen, and we will discuss this separately. And
Yes, absolutely.
de-dollarization, just a word of that, you got to come to a common currency, a tradable currency. Now you can't have NFTs, right? You, being the trading currency, you can't have the Bitcoin as the trading currency. but definitely got to have a currency. And that currency, uh, as I gather, all the reserves in $1 billion will be now perhaps converted into, this country has so many tons of gold reserves. So
Back to
gold,
1970s.
yeah. So the gold is going to be the metric of somebody's wealth in the future. So things will change. We'll discuss this separately.
According to you, how many days will Bakhmut fall? Or Wagner forces are trying to hold ground and liquidate as many as Ukrainians in Bakhmut. By the logic that you say, saying, so I would keep it open for as long as it's a bleeding wound. Just keep it open.
Absolutely. I mean, Bakhmut, if if they make a strategic move of pulling out deliberately, then Bakhmut will fall in a day or two. And if I were the commander of any of these Bakhmut forces and I was suffering very heavy casualties, I would, I know that sooner or later I'm gone. I would rather conserve and pull out the fastest and take defenses in the next, important place.
Ridge line or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what maneuver warfare is all about. There is no ego involved in warfare. Y- when a river flows, what does it do? It avoids the stones. In a stream, if you observe a stream, there are certain rocks standing out, and the water goes around it. So that is what maneuver warfare is about. You avoid these stones in the stream, and you go from the sides and you move ahead. So that is how the Russians would like to play the game, and leave certain places just like that. And Bakhmut, if they are going to be fighting there, they're going to get annihilated. So the earlier they move on, the better. So in my opinion, actually, Bakhmut has fallen. When the president has made a statement saying that we will withdraw,
Ah,
likely withdraw,
okay.
so it is a willy-nilly admission of enough is enough.
Yeah, that plus Prigozhin putting that flag, and he's
Yeah,
given his geolocation. So he opened the geolocation. People have tracked him.
yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
it's pretty much done. Before Finland, Ukraine applied for NATO first to join NATO. Then why Finland first and then Ukraine?
Shanbag, that's a very interesting question. And why is Finland been uh, why has Ukraine not been admitted, and why Finland has been? Ukraine was never meant to be admitted. Otherwise, at the very beginning of the war itself, if NATO had a purpose, they would have absorbed Ukraine as a part of NATO on the first go itself. They never had intentions of doing that. The Americans believe in causing wars, destruction, and to them, this destruction, they need a war to be taking place somewhere or the other. The next stop is Iran, perhaps. So if there is no war, then what do they do with the defense industry? What do they do with the production system? What do they know with all the logistics involved? What do they do with the oil? What do they do with the economy? So it's all economics. Now, uh, you'll say Ukraine has economics. It's a fallout of the economic need of Americans to have a war in some part of the world, right? And as far as Finland is concerned, Finland has happened because it is an opportunity to absorb Finland the fastest. Had Finland been given any time, Finland would not fallen to this trap of
Yeah,
joining
yeah.
NATO. Finland has been independent of any alliance. It has remained neutral since 1949,
Yes.
and it has always believed that it will be able to defend itself. Because it believed it could defend itself, it established for itself a very, very potent armed forces. They have a conscription system. Everybody is forced, is supposed to, join the armed forces. So every man, every woman there in Finland is a trained soldier. If he is not putting on uniform, he or she is a reservist. They have a large amount of aircraft. They have about 100 main battle tanks, Leopard 2s. They have 107 aircraft. They have armored personnel carrier about 613, and they have about 672 RT pieces. So what I'm trying to say is, if this was an opportunity to absorb Finland and Sweden at the earliest and the fastest, and Finland also has fallen into the trap. And the narrative was built around that if you don't, join now, maybe the Russians will attack you subsequently. Whereas Russia has no animosity against Finland and no intention.
Yeah, and Finland has mentioned that we don't feel any threat. Then why are
Yes,
you joining alliance?
yes, they've fallen into the trap, and they've been in a hurry. Uh, and as I mentioned earlier, it's all about the Arctic and subsequent, you know, utilization of Finland as a base for NATO forces towards the Arctic.
So we are at 1 hour. I'm gonna 1 hour and 2 minutes. I'm gonna take 8 more minutes from you. Let's just quick fire some more
Yeah.
questions so that we can cover as many as. Seth Tejas is actually a little upset, and he says 1 liter milk when I arrived in Finland in 2021 was 1.25 euros. Today, after 2 years, is 1.89 euros. That's your ground report of severe inflation in Europe. It's almost 20% YOY on milk. That's Finland, sir. So,
It's just good to hear from you from Finland. Uh, well, if you stick around more in Finland, then it may well go up to 1.50. It may further, inflation may further hit the roof. Uh, and thanks for your input. It's hurting everybody,
yeah,
right from
even us
Finland
in
all the
India.
way to, yeah, it's hurting everybody. And the fuel costs are going to go further up. The OPEC countries, we've all heard, have stopped production. They've also joined in the bandwagon to make more money.
Yeah,
They want prices are going to get hiked up, or have already been hiked up. So inflation is on the rise all over the world, and especially so in Europe. And since you are nearer Ukraine, you will suffer the most. And yes, it is a sad state of affairs. The sooner the war ends, the better it is for everybody.
absolutely, sir. If confrontation with Russia enlarged at the US's behest, why not conclude US is preparing to abandon the Indo-Pacific military and cut a deal with China under the pretext of compulsion? Good economics?
Not happening.
Okay.
Not happening.
They won't let
Just
China go.
yeah, no, no, no. I will put it in the correct perspective. What is happening in Ukraine is a land battle, and United States is just throwing money at the moment and equipment which is used for land battles. Whereas the Americans are basically a maritime and an air power. Okay, It's a maritime power and it's an air power. What is happening on mainland Europe is a land battle wherein they are only supplying equipment meant for fighting on land. They still have everything intact, which is to be utilized against China and which is of priority to them in the Indo Pacific. Neither is China getting involved, nor are the maritime forces and the air forces of the United States getting involved in this battle. So dynamics haven't changed. So this contention of yours, uh, there's no compulsion, and it's got nothing to do with economics. As far as Indo-Pacific is concerned, priorities remain Indo-Pacific and always will remain. And they have adequate troops and forces, well organized, for dealing with China in the Indo-Pacific. Yeah.
So you said Europe has gone back 2 to 3 years. Russians have decided they don't consider Europeans even as partners. They've completely shifted to Asia. Do you think Russia will sell oil to them?
Why not? After all, it's all economics.
Yep.
Russia. I mean, today, very it's they will go perhaps a few cents below the American rate and make adequate amount of more money. They were selling it cheaper. Now they'll sell it at a higher price when the turn comes. They'll keep the price a little lower than that of the Americans and then make enough money. And they'll have reasons and grounds to sell oil at a higher rate. And who doesn't like money? There are no principles involved in this. You've seen Japan, what they have done. You know Europe is still drawing a lot of energy resources. Germany is buying oil from Russia directly, indirectly. So everything is happening. So Russians are also very smart and astute businessmen. They're doing well, very well all over the world. The Russians, so they're smart businessmen. They will not. Uh, this will be just a passing phase, as far as economics is concerned.
Yeah, I mean,
They'll forget the war and they will trade again.
one of the things with Europe is, I agree with you, is because they've not personally attacked Putin the way Americans have done it. It'll be easy for them to still sit on a table and talk to them. And people who used to attack have now left office. Sana Marin, उनकी सबकी छुट्टी हो गई already. So
अभी बाकियों की अभी छुट्टी हो जाएगी. The German chancellor is going to go. So is the French president also. His position is in Donald Trump's. So all that is happening. Russia will definitely sell oil. No issues.
the funny thing is that they want to break up Russia and disintegrate it and do a regime change. That's something that they openly mentioned, and Victoria Nuland and so many people actually said that. But then, it's really interesting when now they'll have to change the narrative. Ki now we have to have a weakened Russia or something like that. They'll probably come up with. I wonder what that will be. Sir.
You see,
Mark says,
breakup of Russia not happening. Regime change, as I see it, not happening for the way they want it. Uh, Not happening.
Ukraine is a theater for NATO. Maneuvers in the Indo-Pacific is another theater. Do you agree?
Absolutely spot on. Two different issues altogether.
So, now John has a little differencing perspective. By the way, I stand with you on the Iran being next in the menu, but he says with the U.S. relations with KSA the way they are, there is no way any conflict with Iran is possible. Without the support of KSA, is not possible.
I agree with you. It's not possible without the support of Saudis. But you see the narrative which is getting built all around the world. And why do you think that compromise between Iran and the Saudis have taken place? It's an after effect of the all the narrative which was being built. The reconciliation between the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and Iran has taken place for a simple reason: the Saudis do not want a conflict on the borders, and Iran and Saudis have realized that they do not want any conflict taking place. So this reconciliation is an after effect of the narrative which was being built around of the Iranians possessing nukes and all that stuff. So this reconciliation which has taken place, in which China is involved, is a direct fallout of the narrative which was being wrongly built. So today, while the narrative still is being built for Iran, the possibility of such a thing happening has reduced considerably. And that is what the point John is making, and I think is valid. But it has to be seen in that particular light. Had the reconciliation not taken place, had this, truce, if I may say so, not occurred, not been brokered by the Chinese, things perhaps would have been different, because the Americans only think from the barrel of a gun, and that was what was happening.
One of the
Yeah.
things, I mean, if I may, it's also, I think the Saudis trying to protect themselves. So if the balloon does go up, he says, "Listen, dude, I'm your friend. Yeah, I'm not doing this. So just leave me alone."
Correct.
He'll probably just put his hands up and say, "भाई, sorry, मैं मेरे को छोड़ दे. मैंने कुछ नहीं बोला ये सब. मैं नहीं कर
No,
रहा
no,
ये सब."
that's what is that's the fact. But nobody wants, in the Gulf, what they've seen and what has happened, the way Iraq has gone, the way all that happened, nobody wants anything in the neighborhood. They don't want to fight in the neighborhood, but it affects them drastically. They've experienced it in the neighborhood. They don't want it.
Yeah,
And the best way to do is reconcile and
just lay off.
lay off and get together and maybe pose a threat subsequently.
Absolutely. Sir, thanks so much. This was a wonderful episode. मजा आ गया इसके अंदर. We've actually, covered some interesting aspects of it. Actually, the ideological aspect. We've normally spoken about the battlefield and this and that. Today, we've covered the ideological aspect of Europe, the thought process in America, the deep state, globalists. I think this is a very well-rounded discussion, and thank you so much. It's something, as I said, and I mean that you don't get to hear normally. It's only very few people around the place who actually talk straight and tell you what exactly is happening, especially with regards to this war. I mean, today we can at least have these conversations openly. In the beginning, when the war started, if you did that, you would have been knocked off YouTube itself. So that's where we were, and that's where we've that's how we've come down to today, where you can actually have these conversations in the open with people listening to it and actually taking something home about it. So, thank you so much, as again, once again, for keeping an eye on Ukraine and the happening there and educating us with regards to the great developments within the region. Till next time, sir. Jai Hind.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed being part of the discussion, and it's always good. It's quite stimulating and worthwhile discussing. And the more you discuss, the more clarity you get. Thank you very much for having me on the show. It's
Thank you,
been
sir.
it's been really nice. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.